My husband demanded 50-50 while I was pregnant, then I found out where his money was really going. A year into our marriage, my husband sat across from me at our kitchen table and told me he wanted everything to be 50-50 from now on. Not in an angry way. Not even emotionally. Calm, almost rehearsed. He said he was tired of feeling like he was investing more into the relationship than I was. That he had his own goals and dreams. That marriage shouldn't mean sacrificing himself financially. And then he said it very clearly. If I didn't agree, we should get divorced. I remember the exact feeling in my body at that moment. Not shock. Not anger. It was more like the floor quietly disappeared under my feet and no one bothered to warn me. I earned 3 times less than he did. We both knew that. I was pregnant. We both knew that too. In a few months, I physically wouldn't be able to work the way I was working now. This wasn't new information. We had planned this pregnancy together. Or at least I thought we had. I tried to talk. I asked what had changed. I asked when he started feeling this way. He leaned back in his chair and said he'd been thinking about it for a while. That he didn't want to feel responsible for another adult. That love didn't mean carrying someone financially. He used words like fairness and partnership, like he'd learned them somewhere recently and was eager to use them correctly. I told him I wasn't refusing to contribute. I told him I already paid what I could. I reminded him that pregnancy wasn't exactly optional once it started. He shrugged and said that plenty of women work while pregnant. When I asked him what exactly he expected me to do when I went on maternity leave, he said, "Well, figure it out." Then he repeated the word divorce like it was a neutral backup plan. From that day on, our home changed. Not suddenly, but steadily, like water damage spreading inside the walls. He started tracking everything. Who bought groceries? Who paid for electricity? Who used more water? If I asked him to grab something from the store, he'd ask if I was going to transfer him the money. If I looked tired, he'd remind me that he was stressed too because of his goals. If I cried, he'd say I was being manipulative. Every conversation turned into accounting. Every argument ended with him telling me I was lucky he was even willing to discuss 50-50 instead of leaving outright. He made comments about how expensive pregnancy was. Doctor visits. Vitamins. Clothes. As if the baby was a personal project I'd started without consulting him. I started doubting myself. Wondering if I was actually being unfair. If I had misunderstood what marriage was supposed to be. I was exhausted all the time, emotional, hormonal, and somehow still trying to prove I wasn't a parasite in my own marriage. I cut back on everything. I stopped buying anything for myself. I skipped meals sometimes just to avoid another comment about grocery bills. And while all of that was happening, he kept saying he didn't have money. That he needed to save. That his future depended on discipline. That I didn't respect his ambitions. About a month into this new reality, something small happened that changed everything. He asked me to log into his online banking to check if a transfer had gone through because his phone was dead. I hesitated for a second, but this wasn't something we'd never done before. We had nothing to hide. Or so I thought. I logged in, found the transfer, and that's when I saw the transaction history. At first, my brain refused to process it. There were so many transactions that the page didn't even load properly. Purchases from a lingerie store I recognized. Expensive lingerie. Not the kind you buy accidentally. Jewelry stores. High-end ones. Payments to hotels. Restaurants I'd never been to. Amounts that didn't match the lifestyle he claimed we could no longer afford. I scrolled. My hands started shaking. The dates lined up perfectly with the period he'd started pressuring me about money. The same weeks he told me we needed to split everything. The same weeks he'd said he was broke. I didn't confront him right away. Something inside me went cold instead. Quiet. Focused. I took screenshots and sent them to myself. Then I started looking closer. Among all those charges, there was one thing that repeated over and over. Transfers to the same bank account. Large amounts. Thousands of dollars. Sometimes weekly. Sometimes more than once a week. Always the same account. I wrote the number down. That night, while he slept next to me like nothing was wrong, I Googled how to identify a bank account owner. It wasn't easy. I dug through forums. Old advice posts. Legal loopholes. Eventually, I found a way through a payment platform he'd used once that partially revealed the recipient's name. It was a woman's name. I felt sick, but still, that wasn't the worst part. People cheat all the time. I had already started emotionally preparing myself for that possibility. What I wasn't prepared for was who she was. I searched her name. It didn't take long. She had a professional website. A polished one. Calm colors. Words like safe space and healing and boundaries. She was a licensed psychologist. A relationship therapist. His psychologist. The same one had told me about casually months ago. The one he said helped him understand himself better. The one he claimed he saw once every 2 weeks. The one he said was expensive but worth it. Had been seeing her for 6 months. Had been paying her thousands. Not for regular sessions. For private retreats. Weekend intensives. Hotels included. Restaurants included. Gifts included. I sat there in the dark, my hand on my stomach, feeling our baby move, and something inside me finally broke in a very clean, very quiet way. The next morning, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I made breakfast. I waited until he finished his coffee. Then I asked him, very calmly, who she was. He froze. Not confused. Not surprised. Frozen. I told him I knew about the money. I knew about the account. I knew about the hotels and the jewelry and the lingerie. I asked him if 50-50 still mattered now that I knew where his money was actually going. He tried to talk his way out of it. He said she helped him. That it was complicated. That I wouldn't understand. That it wasn't physical at first. That she made him feel seen. That he deserved happiness too. At one point, he actually said that if I hadn't been so dependent, he wouldn't have needed that kind of support. That was the moment I stopped seeing him as my husband. I told him I was done. Not arguing. Not negotiating. Done. He laughed at first. Said I couldn't just leave. Said I had no money. Said I was pregnant. Said no one would want to deal with me and a baby. He said I'd calm down. He said I'd come around. Instead, I called a lawyer that same day. The next weeks were ugly. He begged. Then he threatened. Then he begged again. He said the therapist manipulated him. Then he said it was my fault. Then he said he'd cut her off. Then he said he never promised to support me forever. I moved out with help from a friend. I took only what I needed. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped defending my right to exist without paying half of someone else's betrayal. The divorce wasn't easy, but it was clear. The transactions helped. The timelines helped. The lies helped more than anything else. Now I'm on my own. Pregnant. Tired. Scared sometimes. But no longer shrinking myself to fit someone else's fairness. No longer apologizing for needing support while carrying a life. He texts occasionally. Mostly about money. Ironically. I don't reply. Because the moment I saw those transactions, I understood something very simple. He didn't want 50-50. He wanted freedom at my expense. And I refused to raise a child thinking that love is something you have to split evenly while someone else secretly takes more. And I will never, ever let someone convince me again that survival is a negotiable luxury.